The Indigo flight from New Delhi to Srinagar soared into an angry sky. It was Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. What began as a routine journey soon turned into a terrifying ordeal. Near Pathankot, in Punjab, the aircraft encountered a sudden violent storm. This was no ordinary weather. It was a maelstrom of severe turbulence, heavy hail, and a blinding dust storm. The aircraft, caught in the storm's grip, was tossed about like a toy. Passengers, startled from their calm, felt a primal fear. The journey's destination seemed suddenly, terrifyingly uncertain. The pilots wrestled with the controls, the elements raging against them. This was a fight against nature's raw power. The experienced flight crew quickly assessed the dire situation. The storm clouds ahead were dense, ominous, and clearly impassable without significant risk. Continuing on the planned route was not a viable option. The safety of over 200 souls on board rested squarely on their shoulders. They needed to find a way around this meteorological monster. The instruments showed the storm's vastness. Every instinct, every hour of training screamed for an immediate deviation. The hail began to drum against the fuselage, a chilling sound at 30,000 feet. This was a moment demanding swift, decisive action, with lives hanging in the balance. Their first course of action was to seek assistance from within their own country's airspace. The pilots contacted the Indian Air Force's Northern Control. They urgently requested permission to deviate towards the left. This proposed path would take them close to the international border with Pakistan. It was a calculated risk, a necessary question to avoid the storm's core. However, the response from Northern Control was a stark negative. Permission to deviate towards the sensitive border region was denied. The reasons, though not explicitly stated in that moment, were likely rooted in the prevailing security situation and strict airspace control protocols near the militarized frontier. The crew now faced a rapidly shrinking set of options. With the storm intensifying and one avenue for deviation closed, the flight crew faced an increasingly perilous situation. The aircraft was being battered. The need to escape the storm's fury was paramount. Their training dictated that they explore every possible avenue to ensure the safety of their passengers and aircraft. The only remaining immediate option to bypass the worst of the weather was to request entry into Pakistani airspace. This was a significant decision, laden with implications given the fraught relations between the two nations. Yet, the immediate threat of the storm overrode other considerations. The pilots prepared to make contact with Lahore Air Traffic Control, hoping for a reprieve. The call went out across the border. The Indigo pilots contacted Lahore Air Traffic Control in Pakistan. Their request was clear and urgent: permission to enter Pakistani airspace. They needed to make a temporary deviation to the west. This was purely to avoid the dangerous weather system that directly blocked their path to Srinagar. The crew explained the severe nature of the turbulence and the hailstorm. They hoped for a humanitarian consideration, a common practice in aviation emergencies. The lives of nearly 200 passengers, including several Indian members of parliament, hung in the balance. It was a plea for safe passage, a standard request in the face of meteorological peril. The response from Lahore ATC was swift and unambiguous. Permission denied. Pakistani airspace was closed to them. The reason cited was the deeply deteriorated relations between India and Pakistan. This was not a simple operational refusal. It was a reflection of a much larger, more complex geopolitical standoff. Both nations had, in recent times, shut their airspaces to each other's aircraft. This was a direct consequence of heightened military tensions. The Indigo flight, battling a storm, had flown directly into this invisible yet very real wall of political conflict. The sky, usually a realm of open passage, had become another front in their enduring dispute. The geopolitical landscape was indeed grim. Tensions had escalated dramatically following a militant attack in Indian-administered Kashmir on April 22, 2025. That devastating attack claimed the lives of 26 people, primarily Hindu tourists. India, in response, conducted retaliatory strikes on what it described as militant hideouts inside Pakistan. This led to a dangerous cycle of action and reaction. Skirmishes erupted along the line of control, involving heavy fire exchanges. Both sides reported missile and drone attacks, leading to numerous casualties, military and civilian alike. The region was on a knife edge, the closest it had been to a wider conflict in years. This state of near conflict had tangible consequences for civilian aviation. Nearly 20 airports in India's northern and western regions, crucial hubs for travel and commerce, had been closed for commercial use. They were repurposed for military readiness. The skies over the subcontinent, once busy with commercial routes, now bore the scars of this deep-seated animosity. The denial of airspace to the Indigo flight was, therefore, not an isolated incident. It was a direct outcome of this broader, dangerous political game. The passengers on that flight became unwitting participants in this larger drama, their safety compromised by decisions made far away from the cockpit or the storm clouds. Denied entry by both Indian military control for their preferred deviation and by Pakistani ATC, the pilots faced a terrifying dilemma. They were already perilously close to the towering storm clouds. Turning back to Delhi was considered. However, this would mean flying through the turbulent peripheries of the storm for a longer duration, or attempting a wide detour that would consume precious fuel. The crew made a courageous, perhaps desperate, decision. They would press on towards Srinagar, navigating through the storm as best they could. It was a choice between two dangerous paths, and they chose the one that, while fraught with peril, offered the quickest route out of the immediate danger zone, if successfully traversed. What followed was a harrowing passage. The aircraft plunged into the heart of the storm. The impact of heavy hail was deafening, striking the aircraft's skin with brutal force. Extreme turbulence tossed the Airbus A320 around with terrifying violence. At one point, the aircraft experienced a stomach-churning, steep and rapid descent, dropping an astonishing 8,500 feet per minute. This was far beyond the parameters of normal flight. For those on board, it must have felt like an uncontrolled fall. The lights flickered. Loose items became projectiles. The sounds of the storm and the groaning of the airframe filled the cabin. In the midst of this chaos, the flight crew maintained their professionalism. They declared a Pan-Pan call to Srinagar Air Traffic Control. Pan-Pan is an international urgency signal, one step below a Mayday distress call. It signifies an urgent situation requiring priority attention but where there is no immediate life-threatening danger to the aircraft or its occupants, though that line was becoming perilously thin. They requested radar vectors from Srinagar ATC, seeking guidance to navigate out of the storm's most violent cells. For a critical period, the pilots flew the aircraft manually, fighting the storm's fury with skill and determination, wresting control back from the raging elements. The experience for the nearly 200 passengers, among them 5 members of parliament, was nothing short of terrifying. A video later went viral, capturing moments of panic and prayer within the cabin. Sagarika Ghose, a Rajya Sabha MP on board, later described the ordeal as a near-death situation. Passengers spoke of being thrown around in their seats, of fearing the worst. The MPs, accustomed to political turbulence, found themselves in a far more visceral and uncontrollable kind. The shared experience of intense fear forged an unwelcome bond among those on board. Each minute spent in the storm felt like an eternity, a desperate wait for the ordeal to end. Against all odds, and thanks to the skill of the pilots, the Indigo flight eventually broke free from the storm's clutches. The aircraft, battered but still flying, made its approach to Srinagar. At 6:30 p.m. local time, the plane touched down safely on the runway at Sheikh Ul Alam International Airport. A collective sigh of relief, mingled with gasps and quiet prayers, rippled through the cabin. The ordeal was over. Miraculously, despite the extreme turbulence and the terrifying descent, no serious injuries were reported among the passengers or crew. They had flown through hell and emerged, shaken, but alive. The sight of the ground crew approaching the aircraft was a welcome vision. A post-flight inspection immediately revealed the extent of the storm's fury. The aircraft had sustained visible damage. The nose radome, the protective fiberglass cone that covers the weather radar antenna, was significantly damaged by the hailstones. This underscored the severity of the conditions the aircraft had endured. Such damage is not uncommon in severe hailstorms, but it served as a stark reminder of how close the flight had come to a more disastrous outcome. The aircraft was grounded pending a thorough technical assessment and necessary repairs. The physical scars on the plane mirrored the psychological ones carried by its passengers. India's aviation watchdog, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, swiftly launched a probe into the incident. Officials confirmed that the aircraft was indeed caught in a severe hailstorm and experienced significant turbulence. The investigation would scrutinize all aspects of the flight, including the weather information available to the crew, the decisions made in the cockpit, the denial of airspace requests, and the aircraft's performance. The aim was not just to understand what happened on this particular flight, but also to draw lessons that could enhance aviation safety for all, especially in regions prone to extreme weather and geopolitical friction. The probe would involve detailed analysis of flight data recorders and cockpit voice recorders. This alarming incident also brought into focus the broader operational safety measures implemented in the region. Amidst the heightened military tensions, the Indian aviation regulator had previously directed airlines to take precautions. One such directive was to keep aircraft window shades closed during takeoff and landing at airports situated near the border. This was intended to enhance operational safety by minimizing distractions and potential panic in sensitive situations. The Indigo flight's harrowing journey served as a potent reminder that while skies may be contested by nations, the forces of nature respect no borders, and the paramount concern must always remain the safety of human lives.